We are now have our next speaker, Benoit Hardy-Vallee. Benoit is Managing Director HR Platforms at Accenture, and he will be speaking about digital experience technology, an indispensable ally for HR evolution. Is it correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I assume you can see my screen, hear me and see me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you, Russ. Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's actually pronounced Benoit, but it's okay. Don't expect people to be fluent in French, so no worries at all. Thanks, everybody, for your time today. I'd love to spend a little bit of time with you to talk about digital experience technology, right? A subset of all the HR technology, because I think in these times it's becoming increasingly important. So my only ambition here is to give you an overview in a sort of a map of the different families of application that exist and why they are important. I already introduced myself, but let me just put it this way. I spent my career at the intersection of talent, transformation, and technology. These are the subjects that I'm passionate about. And since I start working around and with HR professional, I just seen the impact of technology on the workforce, of technology in HR, and it just creates more and more interesting question and project to be partnering on. So just as a starting point, a couple of data points, right? If you look at the amount of venture capital money pouring into work technology, which is both HR technology and the regular productivity, right? The Zoom, the different tools that we use to do our work, it's not astronomical, but certainly pretty big, and it keeps being stronger, even bigger than other segments of the market, right? And we're on track to have even more investment in this segment than we had last year. So it's not a surprise that when you look at the whole ecosystem of technology, it could be confusing. I have this firm in technology that I know, this consulting firm in Montreal that I'm a friend with called Horizon HR, and they do a cartography of the key application. And this is just for Canada, right? If you go globally or around the world, you can have a lot more, right? Again, I don't expect everybody to be able to read French, but I think you'll get the general message here. It's becoming increasingly confusing. There's a lot of players and a lot of investment. So if we step back and just start with the beginning, right? Why do we have so much technology and why so many of these applications are specifically for the experience of the candidate, of the employee, but also the recruiters, the managers, and so on? Well, we live in a world where a quarter of the purchase on Amazon are conducted in 3 minutes. 3/4 of what we watch on Netflix is derived straight from the recommendation engine, right? We're not even browsing anymore. Netflix is becoming smart enough to recommend things that we or people like us tend to like to watch. We mostly think that personalization is a given, and we're all very comfortable using chatbots when it's time to answer very simple questions. So for candidates, you can imagine that the same logic applies. I mean, most of us, when we are looking for a job, we're looking for ratings online. And if we're not happy with our candidate experience, we tend to share our experience. It's also an opportunity because, on the other hand, candidates who have a good experience, they're more likely to be not only recommending the hiring organization, but even becoming a client of that company. You're not going to buy shoes if the shoe company treated you poorly online or in person during the candidate process, right? It's just basic human nature applied to technology. I don't like overemphasizing the generational divide, right? I think we're all humans, but we're all living in different time or period. But if we look at the so-called Gen Z, and I think most of us, regardless of our age, have now these type of expectation. We want omni-channel brand experience. We're influenced by social media for good or bad reason. And we just dropped out of a website that loads too slowly, right? We're just becoming impatient. Now, if we take again the use case of the candidate experience, a couple of data points here. We form an impression of a website in 5 tenth of a second, right? The blink of an eye, we have an opinion about the career site if we like it or not. If we don't book, if the applying process is more than 5 minutes, or if it takes more than 1 week to book an interview, we have a huge dropout for candidates. 70% of mobile job happens on mobile. Right. So, sorry, of job search happens on mobile. This is where we go now when we look for job. Most of the candidates are perfectly fine with giving information about them if in return it gives them a personalized experience. Most texts are open within 90 seconds, right? So if we don't use these kinds of channels that most of us are familiar with, we're missing something in the candidate experience. And follow-up or lack thereof has been cited as the most common reason for employees to be disgruntled, unhappy, or just disengaged from the recruiting process. So you have to be fast, you have to be quick, you have to be interesting, you have to be visible to engage candidates nowadays. But the problem is that not all the technology is designed this way. If we look at most of the applicant tracking system or the large recruitment platform, sometimes you have rules such as automatically eliminate whoever has a 6-month gap in their resume, which when you think of it, is extremely discriminatory. You can be 6 months out of the workforce for a very good reason. You adopted a child, you had a child, you moved from one place to another, you just needed some space in your life for mental wellness and so on. There are tons of good reasons why people could be out of the workforce. But if we have systems with these sort of automated rule, we're losing tons of people. So it's not only a bad experience, but it's also costing time and money for both sides of the equation. Now, if we look at what is technology giving us these days, I'm not going to go through everything today, right? But just to give you an idea where it's getting now. From a purely strategic point of view, you have technology. And again, I'll be naming a couple of technologies here today. I'm not advocating them. It's the one I'm familiar with. I'm not advertising for any, nor do I have any link with these companies, right? But if you look, for example, a SkyHive, you can have intelligence analytics about the different markets in which you can find skills, which then help you for your workforce planning modules that are becoming increasingly common in applicant tracking system or HCM platform in general. Using this information and say the traffic on your career site and internal research group, you can start having a dynamic brand, right? Presenting yourself online to different segments of your candidates through different communities to create a proper brand experience. Once you start getting that traffic on your career site with a good talent candidate relationship management, right? The same thing that Salesforce has been doing for sales. Now you have technology that help you do that with talent. You can track not only the people who applied, of course, you want to track your applicant, but you want to track your pre-applicant, your prospect, your potential applicants. This is a great source of insight and potential talent. Sometimes people start applying and they just don't finish, right? They get distracted. There's a ping on Twitter, on WhatsApp, or name it, they move into another direction. But if you can capture all this information and follow up with them, then you have a chance of building a much bigger pipeline. Then when you have all that pipeline of talent, it's time to sift through them. Instead of looking line by line or reading those 200 resumes, you can have either good old psychometric tests to get a better selection, or increasingly nowadays, you can have technology that will read all the CVs or resumes, will match them through specific job description, and will tell you if that candidate is a fit or not. Of course, you don't want to hire somebody just based on an AI screening, but when you have a certain volume, you want to be able to select the best one. No recruiters will read 200 CVs, but if you give them the top 20 or 50, at least everybody had a chance, right? Because, anyway, your recruiter will probably read the first top 50. So what about the other 150 that haven't been considered? So in a way, and it's not, I'm not an advocate or I don't have the magical belief that technology will solve everything. But when you have to hire right talent, specific skills rapidly in tough market, you need both the volume of traffic and the ability to select the right one quickly. And then, of course, a lot more technology these days to facilitate contract management, the ability to hire people in geographies that you don't operate, because now a lot of people are hiring remotely. And maybe you don't have a place of operation in a specific country, but you can find talent. You know, instead of opening a new headquarters, you can use these employers of record technologies, services that help you extend your workforce. And when you get people in, you want to have technology that will quickly help them learn, network, or even find a mentor, right? So that's the broad possibility just for candidate experience, what you can do today to gain in speed, in agility, and in insight. I want to spend now just zero in on what you could call engagement technology or candidate engagement technology. 70% of job search start on Google. So you want to make sure that your site is visible, integrated with Google for Job, and that there is not a intermediate job board that steal your experience and derail your candidate toward their job board rather than your career site. So those simple things, these little optimization points that typically ATS don't necessarily manage, can bring a ton of value. Once you get to a career site, of course, they can be all the same for everybody, or increasingly, you will have career site that will adjust your persona. Are you going on that career site for the first time of your life, the second time? Are you an applicant checking in? Are you somebody who almost applied last time? Did you share some information? Are you maybe a current employee? All of these different, or an ex-employees, all of these different personas deserve a different tailored experience. Behind the scene, if you have a skill matching engine, you can not only screen resumes for the recruiters, but you can also present the candidate with the right type of job that would be a fit for them, right? Matching works both ways, for the candidates in terms of recommendation and for the recruiters to find the right talent. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, if we can buy something on Amazon in 3 minutes or less, and trust me, I bought things way faster than 3 minutes, as my wife likes to remind me, can we make the application process easy? Because otherwise, especially for high potential or highly talented people, they tend to be impatient. If we don't cater to their psychology, we risk missing them. So some example here, right? Land O'Lakes, they make butter and cream and different dairy product. During COVID, I think you all remember how suddenly we all became a home cook and start to buy a lot of butter and flour and all that. They needed to hire a lot of people quickly. With an intelligent career site and a talent marketing system behind the scene, they were able to drive a lot more traffic to their career site with one good campaign. Of course, you see here, it's not just the technology. You have to have the purpose, the branding, right? Feed the nation. You're asking people's sense of purpose here, right? We are a company that sell food. We need your help to feed the nation. So you can see the result here. A lot of visit, position filled quickly, a lot more search, which means a lot more engagement on that career site, because they were able to follow up with not only all the applicant, but also the potential applicant, those who left a little trace of information in accordance, of course, with the regulation and privacy law, so that there could be a follow-up after the fact. And it's not just candidates that have higher expectations. Same thing for employees. They all want, or many of us now expect, some kind of flexible work. It was 10% of the job posting on LinkedIn, but it drove a quarter of the traffic, right? So it gives you a good idea. We're all looking for better development experience. It's always the top driver of disengagement, the top pull factor. In other words, people are disengaged when they don't have a future and the ability to progress. And they are engaged, excuse me, when you give them the possibility to grow and develop themselves, right? And that's why a lot of people are thinking about switching job. Again, not that technology can solve everything, but if we think in terms of approach, offering your internal candidates, right, your employees, the ability to move internally is one of the good solutions that help with retention. The intent to stay is much higher when you enable internal mobility. And for those job seekers, right, the people who says, I'm already looking for a job, 10% of that group would rather find a job in the same organization. They just want to progress or do something different. It doesn't mean that they don't like you as an employer. They want a new job, not a new employer. So there's 10% you can save right there by offering them an internal mobility platform, or at least availability. And there's another 7% who's indifferent. I could go outside or I can go inside. So that's 17% of your active job seekers that you could still keep with you. Of course, the challenge is typically, from what I found and read and discussed with a lot of clients, it's not that people don't have a policy. Most organizations are perfectly comfortable with the idea of let's have people moving internally. The challenge typically are two. There are the tool issue and the culture issue. On the tool issue, well, if it's hard, if it's complicated, if it doesn't feel like a simple process, people won't do it. We look for convenience, for access, for simplicity. If we don't offer that, people won't look for a job internally. The other challenge is typically managerial resistance. And I say that with a lot of empathy because I understand as a manager, if you have a team and you have a top talent who wants to move out, from your own perspective, if that person is moving to another company or just the next team, for you, it's pretty much the same thing, right? You're just losing your top talent. So there's a whole education that needs to happen to make sure that managers are comfortable with the idea of helping their employees to progress internally. It's good for the organization, even though short term it might be a drag for the team. So there's a whole category now of technologies called the talent marketplace, right? There are different names where you're offering people the ability to progress internally. And yes, they have the ability to find a new job, right? The open job that are available right now. And that's important to enable that. But sometimes you need to go step by step. It's little gigs or projects or tasks, right? Micro engagement in another department where you just help on a project, help on a few slides, help on a report so that you can develop your skills progressively. It's a Trojan horse, if you will, for the full internal mobility. This platform will also match you with mentors. Maybe you will have an app also for coaching or a broader network or even DE&I network, right? You have business resource group where you can have people of, different background, demographic, or interests that can network together, and that increase the visibility of groups that sometimes where individuals might feel a bit isolated. And if it's not an internal role, a job that's open today, a talent marketplace will enable the individuals to look at the future job. Today, I'm a sales associate. One day, I would love to be a VP of operation. It's a different silo in the organization. It's a different department. But if I can learn the kind of skills that are needed to get there, I can start planning my development, taking some projects and tasks and mentors and looking at all the resources so that while doing my job, I can invest in my skills for the longer term. An example of that was at Kuehne+Nagel with their Career Explorer project. They had the same approach that you would see on those candidate websites that I described above, right, before. It's easy to apply. It's easy to find the information. It's all proposed to you. You can apply in a few clicks. It's personalized. It's a modern experience. They saw a high conversion rate, right, 22%, and they reduced the time it takes to hire people internally. Speed is good for the candidates, but also good for the organization, especially if you have tons of delivery to do. And you can imagine that Kuehne+Nagel or DHL or FedEx, all of these organizations, how they were busy during the pandemics. And I don't think they're less busy today. Another category related to the talent marketplace that's interesting to consider nowadays are the learning experience platforms. I think by now everybody should be familiar with the learning management system, good old LMS, which are basically a classroom management, right? I mean, when you go to school and you're being told on Friday at 2 p.m. you're in mathematics fix with Mr. Jones. Well, this is basically what typically the LMS were doing. They were assigning people to training, and you could track that, and then you could report, and you have the grades and the scores and so on. But again, this is not necessarily a good experience, and it's not necessarily an engaging experience. It does not make me want to learn more. So now, drawing from the Netflix playbook, learning experience platform will have on the admin side an advanced content management capability where you can have all those videos and training that you bought externally, those that you develop internally, maybe having user-generated content, as well as integration with that free content that now you can find online. I mean, there's fantastic TED Talks that everybody can watch for free. If you do a good curation, you can build career path, learning path for your different employees. So these systems, just like Netflix, will have a high level of personalization. It's all online. It will suggest content that you should be interested in. If you are a software developer in Prague or a VP of sales in Cincinnati, there's a good chance you will be interested by a different topic, and you might have different regulation or mandatory training to take, right? All that within the same organization. It allows also for asynchronous learning, right? You don't have to be in a classroom or watch the same call. It's content that you can consume at your own discretion. You can also add gamification or micro or nano certification. The idea that instead of having, long certification that are extremely costly, if you can package your learning as little component, 5-10 minutes, a little quiz, a little test, and you can have a little badge at the end of it, you create more engagement. And all the organizations that use those nano certification tend to see a much bigger pickup in training. So one engineering firm, for example, was able to reduce the time of training completion by half, from 8 months to 4 months. It was easier to find, it was more engaging, it was personalized, everything was consolidated in one place. Many companies have too many training systems or learning systems. A learning experience platform brings everything in one place. You do all of your learning. And of course, you can have all the analytics on the adoption, the use, and so on. And they were happy to see that the adoption was up to 95%. Now, we live in the era of platform, whether it's the HR platform or the operational platform that we use in our daily work, right? The Salesforce, the ServiceNow, the custom industry company-specific platform that we use. A lot of the digital projects don't meet expectation. We spend a lot of time switching from one app to another. Depending which research to look at. Some highlighted that we could be on average managing 35 applications per week, right? If you do the list of everything you're using, it could be challenging. And when it's a new platform that's freshly deployed, it can create even more headache. So seeing that, there's another category of technologies, again, in the experience world that's really important, and it's the digital adoption platform, like the My Guide or the WalkMe. The idea is that training does not need to be always a separated activity from the use of the platform. Yes, you can have webinar and training and meetings where you demo the technology and you explain people how to use it. On the other hand, did you ever took a training class for buying on Amazon or using an iPhone or Android? Normally, no. We start playing with them, and then when we hit a difficulty, then we find the information, right? We Google how to change that setting on the microphone of my phone and so on. So the digital adoption platform use the same logic. It will embed the intelligence that you need at the point of action. So if you are in sales and you are using Salesforce, you will have that little pop-up when you cannot complete, say, a task, or you haven't filled the form the right way. You can have the assistant that will show you exactly what you need. Maybe it's a visual, or it could be a short text, or it could be a video. And sometimes if there are tasks that are really useful for you to do once or twice a year, and you don't really need to learn them, then it will automate the step-by-step, right? So every time there's a challenge, you have the intelligence being presented to you when you need it. So little by little, you learn when you have a problem. Pretty good for memorization. So a lot more adoption. And of course, you get all the data in the backend, because now you can see where are people challenged with my new technology? What kind of task do they tend to drop off or not complete? So again, during the pandemics, right? It's amazing the number of stories that we all had due to COVID-19. When we look at this organization, a healthcare organization, they had to onboard 80,000 people in a new system. Training 80,000 people, given the kind of pressure that this industry was on, was not necessarily doable. So they use a platform like WalkMe to quickly upskill them and show them just the minimal effective dose of training, right? It's a little bit like in medication, right? They always say, take the minimal effective dose, just enough to make a difference. It's the same thing with training. Use the minimal effective dose of learning so that you can do the job you're trying to do. And that's it, because people don't want to be certified in the platform. They want to do their job. They're looking at a bigger picture. Now, if we look also within the realm of HR, there are lots of administrative tasks. One of my favorite one is the scheduling of interviews. It's amazing how this task can take a lot of time. On average, it could be 3 emails or 3 phone calls, all that back and forth. When you're trying to hire hundreds of people and book, 4 interviews per different role with multiple rounds of interviews, it can become challenging. Especially now that we live in a world where we're not just waiting for candidates to apply, right? In 1991, only 4% of the employees were recruited, right? Selected with a recruiter who say, hey, would you like to apply? Or, hey, I would love to find you. Now it's getting sometimes up to 25%, depending on the industry. But it's also faster, right? Because you create that connection. So all that managing that interaction with candidate can take a lot of time. And now there's technology to facilitate that. So if you think just looking at what's common task for AI technology, you can now automate that process. You can have your hiring manager, the recruiter, the candidate, all looking at the same calendar, having an email invitation that will update itself if somebody cannot make it or need to change the time, the time of the interview. And better, you now have AI assistant who can use natural language and say, so-and-so was not available that day. Can I propose you another time frame? And then you pick that. And that's just a few of the things that are possible today, right? I'm not talking about the fancy things like these days, everybody talk about the GPT chatbot. It's all over the place on the internet. It's fascinating. We haven't seen yet what it can do for HR people who are trying to manage HR process, or in this case, hire a lot of people. What we do know, however, as of today, what AI can do in HR, especially in recruitment, right? Automating the capture of data, the automatization of all of these different tasks that take time, the talent marketing, creating campaign based on rules. Everybody who's a software developer who speaks German and lives in New York, you can create that campaign to reach out to only that demographic in your pipeline with personalized keywords and content, and all that through AI and automation. And up to a certain degree, and I want to be very cautious here, it can reduce some of the bias, not all of that. But there's one thing we know: AI doesn't care about how your last name sound or if your first name sound more male or female, right? These are things that AI technology is not interested in. So again, there could be challenges. It's not a perfect solution, but in the area of CV matching, it could be efficient and reducing, not eliminating, some of the biases. If you look just for raw time saving, right? Southwest Airlines was sharing on a couple of forums already the sheer amount of time that they can save just by using a chatbot who can interact with candidates, right? Just those back and forth that you typically do with a recruiter, it translates in time. Of course, there's always time and place for an interaction with a human. You don't want to take out the human of the interaction, but there's a lot of tactical questions about dress codes, location, office, all that sometimes it's not that easy to find on the career site, or it's just a faster experience to type a question in the chat bot and get the answer. Of course, we cannot talk about AI without talking about ethics. I just want to highlight, and I know it was also a topic in the previous presentation, but I want to highlight some good principles that I've seen in that most recent Bill of Rights that the White House put together. And I think it gives us a good blueprint for developing and using AI system. First, they have to be safe and effective. They need to do a job and do not harm anybody. We need to make sure that they do not discriminate, that they keep our data private, that we know when we interact with an AI system, right? We should be notified that you are actually talking with a robot or a chatbot, not with a human, right? And so on and so on. And finally, you also should have the option to fall back with a human interaction, right? A bit like when you're on the phone with a call center and an automated call center, and you don't get the result and you start hitting zero, ultimately you end up speaking with someone. So same logic with AI system. You should be able to escape the loop from time to time. Now, if we keep with the example of recruitment, for those companies who said, in a survey, yes, we did save time using AI. When you ask them, what did you do with that time that you saved? Well, we were spending more time sourcing for key roles, those very specific, hard to find engineer and quantum computing applied to security analysis in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm making this up, but you know the idea. Sourcing for these roles, we spend more time doing that. We connect with key candidates. We communicate with the prospect in the hiring funnel. In other words, that whole pitch, that marketing around AI, it could help us doing more human tasks. Well, in a way, this is what we're seeing here. People use that time not to slash their recruiting function, but to have more interesting tasks for the human. And a lot of clients I've seen over the years told us that they are evolving their recruitment function by elevating their roles of people who do talent marketing full-time. Others become specialized in HR technology rather than being a generalist recruiter. So all that to say that the move to cloud a few years ago brought us the HCM system, the HRIS, those big ERP applied to HR. And we needed that. That was fundamental. You need to manage time, people, money, and data. But now increasingly, you need to manage the experience. You need an analytics layer. You need technology to help people cope with all that technology and to make sure that each of these personas here at the top have a good experience. Otherwise, they won't be using it. So where do you start? Just like any other business endeavor, right? What's the business case for that? Speak with the business unit. Is it something you want to buy, build, or more likely optimize, expand on what you already have? Speak with IT, speak with the vendors. What's on their roadmap? Can you use the vendor's roadmap to influence your own strategy? What kind of skills would you need? Do you need to elevate, change, transform the role, the competencies needed for a specific HR job? And then start small and build from there, right? Maybe it's one department or one job function, and make sure that you can tap in your IT budget. Now, sometimes I get questioned about the metaverse, and I just wanted to highlight that quickly. Yes, there's some interesting technology coming in. In the short term, I don't think none of us are interested in spending a whole day in the metaverse with a VR goggle. But for recruiting, having an event in VR could be interesting. It could be a little bit more comfortable. People don't see you. You can use your own persona. Same thing for onboarding. Where I see the value now, and I've seen some good use case, is in learning. If you spend 15 minutes in a metaverse created environment, practicing your, say, presentation or communication skills in a safe environment with people or even avatar giving you feedback on your communication skills, it's a very immersive and effective way of learning. And this is it's been shown to speed the time of acquisition for communication skills. So I think this is a segment to measure. So to conclude, let's make it a business issue. In the end, we're looking for speed. We're looking for convenience because yes, we want an experience because the experience will have business result. Think about speed and experience and see if you can engage the organization and its budget. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope it gave you some good idea. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn and so on. So I'll be happy to engage with you if you have any other question or you want to learn more about topics that I covered already.
Thank you, Benoit. We have a little bit time. So does anybody have questions? You could write it in the chat or just turn on a microphone and speak.
I just wanted to give an applause to Accenture because I think you are very thoughtful leader as a company in AI, and this research about AI maturity that I highlighted in my presentation, I really recommend to everyone because it has a lot of great insights, a lot of things that I think you can apply even if you are in a startup or in a smaller organization. So for me, this is a very big source of information that I use in my own development to look always what Accenture, Deloitte, McKinsey, etc. do, and great from that perspective. And these are all available to everyone. They are not restricted like Gartner or whatever. So so I would really like to make everybody enthusiastic about what is out there, and things like what you do, like your podcast or whatever. It's great because you synthesize or distill the things. But for those who love research and all these kind of things, there's plenty of great information out there.
Thank you. And speaking of podcasts, just a quick plug, but I love to think about the future of work and talk with a lot of interesting people. So in the pandemic, I started a podcast called Abrupt Future. It's on all the different platforms. There's no advertising for me or for Accenture, or it's really just a pure reflection and a way for me to learn. I 30 episodes now, and I'm going to be posting 10 new ones in the start of the new year, where for the season 2, so to speak, I'll be interviewing academics from around the world who work on AI and team building and all of these interesting questions in our era. So it's free, no advertising. It's just a passion project that I'm glad to share with the broader community. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Benoit.